If you're a spiritual person, you may believe in things like spiritual warfare or angels or demons, but most people don't believe that they can actually hear from them or see them. People with mental health conditions like bipolar disorder or schizophrenia sometimes do. Today, I'm talking about the connection between religion and psychosis. Why does religion become the theme of so many psychotic episodes? I'm Patty, the girl with blue energy. I have bipolar disorder and I make videos about mental health and personal growth. Let's start by talking about something called hyperreligiosity. So when someone is experiencing hyperreligiosity, they get fixated or obsessed with religion. So they might go down rabbit holes trying to find the origin of life, or they may take on new religious traditions suddenly, like they're wearing religious attire they didn't wear before, or they're fasting, or they're praying all the time. They might also do things like get completely obsessed with sin, or is this sin? Is that sin? Is what I'm doing with my mind, is that sin? They get preoccupied with that, and they can also get obsessed with talking about religion, spiritual experiences, preaching to you, and things like that. Now, we all know religious people and have friends that are religious, go to church, that are spiritual. That is not hyperreligiosity. Hyperreligiosity is when religion starts to consume you to the point where it's affecting your life. One specific form of hyperreligiosity is called scrupulosity, and it is a type of religious OCD. And up to a third of people who are diagnosed with OCD may experience scrupulosity. Scrupulosity involves intense guilt or anxiety about religious issues or moral issues, and particularly about sin. So people dealing with scrupulosity, they may experience like extreme guilt over things they see as sin. Even intrusive thoughts that come into their mind, like, is what I'm thinking about sin? Oh no, I keep thinking about this and I keep sinning and having distress about this. Or they may pray repeatedly as a form of OCD, or feel they haven't prayed correctly. Those are just some of the issues someone with scrupulosity might be dealing with. You might think that hyperreligiosity only affects religious people. And that is often the case, but you can experience hyperreligiosity even if you didn't come from a religious background or weren't particularly religious before. These are a few warning signs of hyperreligiosity you might want to look out for. So they might become suddenly preoccupied with religion when they were not before. Or they might start praying for long periods or meditating for hours on end. They might start reading religious text obsessively. Maybe not just the Bible. They may start reading tons of different religious texts. And they might start following or getting preoccupied with apocalyptic style preachers. Religious psychosis may start off as hyperreligiosity and then progress to religious delusions and hallucinations in some people. How common is religious psychosis? There are a few common delusions that are seen during psychosis. Now, psychosis can range from anything from thinking someone from the government is watching you, or that you have a chip in your brain from the aliens, or any number of things can be involved in a psychotic episode, but these are just some of the most common themes. The first one is the most common theme, and it is persecutory. So people with this type of delusion think that they're being watched or followed, or somebody's trying to harm them. The next most common theme is delusions of reference. And what this means is that the person thinks they're getting special messages. They might listen to the radio and think the radio is giving them a special message, or the television is giving them a special message, or they're hearing special messages from the cell phone tower by their apartment, those kind of things. The next most common delusion is grandiose, and this is one you see in bipolar mania a lot. People will have delusions of grandeur, and sometimes that means they think they're God. They think they were chosen by God and they're on a special mission. They think they have special gifts or special powers. Control. This one means that you think your thoughts are being controlled or your actions are being controlled, or somehow you're being controlled by other forces. And finally, religious. Religious delusions means you think that God is speaking to you. You can see angels or demons, or you think you're getting special messages from God, or even you think you are God. Religion can affect the theme of psychosis that someone experiences. So, for example, somebody who's experiencing persecutory psychosis, they could think that government agents are following them everywhere and monitoring their phone calls. But if they have a religious theme, they may think that demons are following them everywhere and watching them and that kind of thing versus government agents or aliens. It just affects the theme and the type of delusion they have. Religious themed psychosis is actually pretty common. I looked at a number of studies, and depending on the location and the culture, the themes that were religious, so the themes of delusions, hallucinations, psychotic episodes that were religious, were around 15 to 35%. While religious themes are really common, what's interesting is the person's culture and location have a lot to do with that. One study on auditory hallucinations found that religious themes were involved in 36% of Korean subjects, but only 12% of Chinese subjects. Another study found that religious-themed psychosis was less common in the UK when compared to Saudi Arabia. And another study found that religious-themed psychosis during manic episodes was more common in India than it was in the United States. Delusions are often based on the person's personal background and culture. So if religion is a big part of the person's life or culture, it may be more likely to be the theme of any psychotic experiences they have. What are some signs of religious psychosis? So the first one is they suddenly become extremely interested or fixated on religion, or hyperreligiosity. You can experience hyperreligiosity without it going into psychosis, but it is definitely a red flag to look out for. Delusions. Now, you may not always know if someone's having delusions, but if they tell you they're hearing from God, they've been chosen by God, demons are following them, they have special gifts, things like that, that is a good sign that they are experiencing religious psychosis. Hallucinations. Now, somebody might tell you, I prayed and God spoke to me, and that's not a hallucination. People sometimes get messages during prayer or meditation that are not hallucinations. But if somebody indicates that they visibly saw God, an angel, a demon, or heard from them, then that's definitely a sign that they may be experiencing religious psychosis. Disordered thinking about religion. So when somebody's having disordered thinking about religion or anything during a psychotic episode, they may ramble on about religion and not make any sense. They may send you a text message that is a book long with no paragraph breaks and doesn't make any sense. Those kind of things are what you want to look out for when somebody has a mental illness and you suspect that they are experiencing religious psychosis. And finally, drastic behavior changes, like they shave their head, they suddenly start wearing long dresses when they wore jeans before, they're not wearing makeup anymore, they're having extreme behavior changes. Maybe they give away all their possessions, things like this. That's something to watch out for. It doesn't necessarily mean they're having religious psychosis, but if they're having it with delusions and some of the other symptoms like hyperreligiosity, something you want to watch out for. Now let's talk about spiritual experiences versus religious psychosis. If you consider yourself a spiritual or religious person, you may have had some type of spiritual experience. According to research, approximately 1/3 of people in the US, Britain, and Australia claim to have had some type of spiritual experience. This is not psychosis. In a 1998 study, researchers identified 4 types of spiritual experiences that are most commonly experienced by people. One is mystical. They have an experience where they feel more spiritually aware, or they have some experience where they feel a sense of oneness with the universe or with God. Paranormal. This is when someone has a psychic or out-of-body type experience. Charismatic. This is when people are filled with the Holy Ghost or they speak in tongues. Regenerative. This is when someone has an experience where they have some type of religious enlightenment or a conversion, like they're born again, something like that. The DSM-5 recognizes that people can have religious experiences or beliefs that are not delusions or part of a mental illness, even if these experiences cannot be proven. One way that clinicians differentiate between religious beliefs and delusions is whether or not the person's belief is accepted within their community. For example, if you go to a church that is charismatic and speaks in tongues, and you go to your doctor and said, I went to church and I spoke in tongues this Sunday, that would not be considered psychosis because it was normal within your community. The DSM-5 has a specific section in it called religious or spiritual problems, and it's categorized under other conditions that may be a focus of clinical attention. This category was added to address spiritual problems that might be causing distress for someone, like losing their faith or having questions about their religion or values. The DSM-5 does not have specific criteria for differentiating spiritual experiences or deeply held religious beliefs from psychosis. But a 2009 article published in the Archives of Clinical Psychiatry proposed 9 ways to differentiate psychosis from spiritual experiences. The first one is lack of suffering. The second one is lack of functional impairment. The third one is experiences last a short duration and are sporadic. The next one is a critical attitude of objectivity with regard to the experience. In other words, they're able to look at the experience and reflect on it objectively. Compatibility with the patient's background. Absence of comorbidities. So they don't have schizophrenia or bipolar disorder and they're manic. If they have comorbidities, then this may not be a spiritual experience. Control over the experience. The experience promotes personal growth over time. The experience is directed towards others. In other words, it's not ego-driven. They don't think, I was chosen by God, I'm a special messenger of God. It's not ego-driven, it's something they experience that is directed towards others. How can you help someone with religious psychosis? The first thing is to try to be calm and supportive. Don't be confrontational, judgmental, or try to argue with them about their delusions. Validate their feelings when possible. You can't always agree with them, but you can say, I understand how that might make you feel. If the person is willing to talk to someone or get help, you can take them to your local emergency department. And if they are having a psychiatric emergency, you can call 988 for help. If someone is a danger to themselves or others, though, please seek out emergency help right away. I made this video not just for this channel, but in memory of my brother, Peter Snow, who left his home in Plainwell, Michigan on November 2nd, 2020. He was experiencing religious psychosis and has been missing for nearly 6 years. If you found this video helpful, please be sure to click the like button and, of course, subscribe. I'll have another video out for you guys real soon.